Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Could you open the screen up so I can see the lettering when it comes up?
Yes.
This is a discussion on the life of Advaita Acharya and his role in Caitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela. Thursday was his appearance day, and very soon, this coming week, is Lord Nityananda's appearance day, and then after that, Caitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance day. The painting that you see in the front of you in the screen is a painting commissioned by the British government during the British occupation period of time in the mid-1700s of Shantipur. They made various paintings of various places throughout India, holy places particularly, and it's a beautiful illustration of what Shantipur looked like at that time along the bank of the Ganges River. And this is what Shantipur looks like today. Shantipur is a city that's some distance, quite some distance from Navadvip, or the birthplace of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And the temple structure that you see on the outside will shortly go inside and have darshan of the deities. But if you were to walk going to the left of what we're facing, down a little sloping hill, you would come to another structure. That's this one. It's the sitting place of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Acharya, where from time to time they would come together and sit and take prasad sometimes, and engage in discussions sometimes about the strategy for pushing forward the Sankirtan movement. It's moving again without my touching this.
I'm not controlling it.
Okay, I'm just letting you know it's doing it what it was doing before. There's a nice Prabhupada story behind this sitting place. This has to do with Srila Prabhupada. And when he had taken sannyas and was following the instruction of a spiritual master to go to the West, he was to board a cargo ship that was leaving from the Calcutta port to America. And the day before his departure date, he was here at Shantipur. And all day long, chanting on his japa beads before this little meeting place of the three great Prabhus in the Panchatattva. And the pujari saw sadhu back there, chanting and crying and weeping profusely. So he wondered maybe he's having some problem. So he went to ask, and Prabhupada replied that I'm here to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, Lord Caitanya, and Advaita Acharya, because I have a very difficult, impossible mission to fulfill on the order of my spiritual master, and I'm praying for their mercy. So this is a very special place where the activities of and furthering the activities of the Sankirtan movement were planned. Some years later, that same pujari noticed many European, American, Australian, Western devotees wearing tilak and shaved head and sikas coming, and saris, of course, also coming to Shantipur. So he was curious and he asked about them. And one of them gave him a Back to Godhead magazine. And he noticed in the masthead of the Back to Godhead magazine that little picture of Srila Prabhupada. And then he understood this was that same sadhu that was here at the place that you see on your screen, praying for mercy. So he apparently got some mercy from Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Acharya. It's a very special place for in the hearts of those who are preachers in the Western world, this very sacred place. And inside the temple area, there's a nice deity, murti, neem deity of Advaita Acharya himself. And this is in the colder weather. They have a little bundled up in a nice turban. And another altar is the altar of the deities that he worshipped, Radha, Madan Gopal. And if you look closely down in the front, there's a Shalagram Shila. And the Shalagram Shila is the Shila that Advaita Acharya personally worshipped to call for the appearance of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, as well the Radha, Madan Gopal deities. Here's Madan Gopal up close. Looks very happy. And that's the hand of Radharani reaching out to give her benediction to all of us. Here's an artist's illustration of the markings on the lotus feet of Advaita Acharya. Now we're accustomed to seeing Advaita Acharya in contact with the Panchatattva. In fact, a little history. Before there were deities, the standard for all ISKCON centers, there wasn't even really so much worship in home at that time, but ISKCON centers was the Panchatattva painting that you see. Artists were given the assignment to make as many of them as they could because the Hare Krishna movement was expanding rapidly. And Prabhupada called it the Guru Gauranga altar. That means smaller picture in the front of himself and Bhaktisiddhanta, Guru and Paramaguru, and behind Gauranga, Lord Chaitanya, and in the 5 features. If you see on our left, on the far right side of the Panchatattva, the painting of Advaita Acharya is highlighted because he's their topic. Those on Lord Chaitanya's right, that is Nityananda and Advaita, they're in the Vishnu Tattva category, expansions of himself. And to Lord Chaitanya's left, or to our right, is Gadadhar, who is none different than Srimati Radharani, and Srivas, who is the Jiva soul in the Panchatattva. So 2 Vishnu Tattva forms, 1 Shakti Tattva form, and 1 Jiva Tattva form. And there's a lot of this description in the Adi Leela of Caitanya Charitamrita. And here's the deity of Advaita Acharya in Shriram Mayapur. Now, according to Caitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya, Advaita Acharya is none different than Mahavishnu. Here you see Mahavishnu reclining on the causal ocean. Beneath him is the causal ocean, which is within this vast cloud of the Mahatattva. And shining through the cloud of the Mahatattva is Lord Krishna, the original cause of all causes. So the explanation that you'll find there in Caitanya Charitamrita is he is considered the upadan karana, or the material cause. The other kind of cause is Krishna in the beyond the spiritual sky, that's nimitta karana, or the efficient cause. And if you want to learn some more details of that understanding, you can look at that reference, Adi Leela 6, 14 to 15. But he's Mahavishnu, and he's often referred to in Caitanya Charitamrita as Mahavishnu. In fact, there was one very nice pastime at Narendra Sarovar. This is, Narendra Sarovar is in Jagannath Puri. After the Rath Yatra festival, and also after the Gundicha cleansing, the Lord Chaitanya and his associates would have bath and have water sports in Narendra Sarovar. So on one occasion, Lord Chaitanya requested they would splash each other and do funny things. They would pair off in teams and just play games like little boys. Although they're very saintly and erudite personalities. So Lord Chaitanya requested Advaita Acharya to perform the pastime of Anantashesh. So Advaita Acharya floated in the water, and Caitanya Mahaprabhu laid down on Advaita Acharya and demonstrated his pastime of Sheshashayi, Vishnu. So he's Vishnu, Advaita Acharya. It says, by his spiritual potency, he supported and floated Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's Mahavishnu. But normally we think of him in terms of his enjoying the activities of the Sankirtan movement of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Now here we see Advaita Acharya, as often we see him, with a beard. But devotees often like controversy, I've noticed. And so here's a controversy for you, devotees. Here's a painting of a deity of Advaita Acharya that has no beard. And I'm going to read to you something that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has written in Chaitanya Bhagavat when describing Advaita Acharya, that he has no beard. Here's what Bhaktisiddhanta wrote. In accordance with scriptural injunctions, Sri Advaita Prabhu shaved his mustache, beard, and hair. Hair of any length on the chin is ordinarily called dadi, or beard. Due to ignorance, some people attribute to him symptoms like dress, beard, and hair of a foolish baula. But actually, he was clean-shaven. Pretty clear, right? Clean-shaven. Look at the picture. Here, Bhaktisiddhanta. Now let's hear what Srila Prabhupada has to say. And this is one of those rare occasions, really super rare occasions, that we don't hear Prabhupada saying precisely what Bhaktisiddhanta said. This is Prabhupada in a lecture at 26 2nd Avenue, 1966, speaking on Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila. It's when Sanatan Goswami became freed from his service in Nawab Hussain Shah and had a beard and hair like a Muslim. So Prabhupada is explaining, get him to a barber and clean shaven. According to the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sampradaya, they kept themselves clean shaven. And only instance is there Advaita Prabhu, he had his beard. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never asked him to cleanse, because one reason is that Advaita Prabhu was just contemporary to his father, so he did not like to dictate. But otherwise, all his disciples were clean-shaven. So those of you that like controversy, here's one. And not only this old-styled painting of Advaita without a beard, there's some modern, very modern ISKCON artists painting him in the Panchatattva without a beard. And here's another one, Panchatattva painting when he's without a beard. But in Mayapur, they like him with a beard. So that's our deity. Panchatattva deities in Sridham Mayapur. And of course, they've very carefully researched, and they're following what Prabhupada described. Some things that we know about Advaita Acharya's life include his being an initiated disciple of Madhavendra Puri. We all know the story of Madhavendra Puri being a Paramahansa guru. He was visiting different places of pilgrimage, and of course one of them was Vrindavan. And here we see the celebrated painting of Krishna in the guise of a cowherd boy, a village boy, bringing him a pot of milk, eventually showing him where the Gopal deity was, and Madhavendra Puri installing Gopal and worshipping Gopal very luxuriously for 1 year, and then Gopal requesting Madhavendra Puri to go to Puri and get him sandalwood and camphor, because in the summer it's really hot in Vrindavan, and he wanted to become more cool. So Madhavendra Puri made his overland travel to Puri, and on the way he visited Shantipur, and there in Shantipur he gave Diksha to Advaita Acharya, and then on to Jagannath Puri. Another incident in the early stages of Advaita Acharya's life was Haridas Thakur and his relationship with him. After Haridas came to Navadvip, this is sometime before Caitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, Haridas was honored with the first Shraddha during the Shraddha ceremony that the very, very elevated Brahmana Vaishnav Advaita Acharya offered first to Haridas. Of course, we know the story. Haridas objected. People are going to criticize you because it goes to the most exalted person, and I'm a low-born person. And Advaita Acharya then refuted his idea, saying, you're constantly chanting the holy name, and one who constantly chants the holy name is at the highest position, and referred to scripture after scripture. He was not intimidated by what people might say. He was a strict follower of Vaishnava teachings. So he and Haridas were very much involved in calling Lord Caitanya to appear, because they discussed with one another spiritual topics on a regular basis, and both felt anxiety about the rapid deteriorating condition of this age of Kali. And here we see a painting of Advaita Acharya. You can't tell so well, but he has tears in his eyes, contemplating the circumstances. Extended discussion in Chaitanya Bhagavat, how he lamented very, very deeply the whole world being not properly led by the Brahmanas. Even the Brahmanas were engaged in materialistic activities instead of Vishnu Bhakti. And so he, in his contemplation and deep scriptural learning, he remembered a very important text from the scripture. It's now present in Hari Bhakti Vilas, which was written after this event, but it's from the Gautamiya Tantra, where it says, Sri Krishna, who is very affectionate towards his devotees, sells himself to a devotee who offers merely a tulsi leaf and a palmful of water. So he did better than a palmful of water. It was Ganges water and tulsi manjaris, and he had a big supply because he was a wonderful Vaishnav, and loudly calling out to the Supreme Lord to appear, and personally make a difference in the direction of this age of Kali, going down and down and down. Later, Mahaprabhu said, I was in my mystic sleep upon the ocean of milk, which means Sweta Dweep, which means Shira Dakshai Vishnu, although he's Mahavishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu is his expansion, so it's quite okay. I was in my mystic sleep upon the ocean of milk when I was woken up by the loud calling of Nada, Sri Advaita. My present incarnation is due mainly to him. So naturally there's a great affection between the two. Just explain a little bit about this term Nada, because we don't hear it so much in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it's mentioned again and again in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Advaita Acharya is referred to as Nada. And there's a whole nice purport where Bhaktisiddhanta explains the meaning. And the meaning, he refers to something written by Bhaktivinoda, that in Bengal, where the syllable Ra is often pronounced Da or Da. So Nara, he writes, refers to the aggregate of living entities, just as in Nara, Narayana. Narayana means he's the ayana or the shelter of Nara, the aggregate of all living beings. So he, Mahavishnu, is the shelter of all living beings during the time of the cosmic manifestation. So Nara becomes Nada in local Bengali language or speech. He also writes that Nara can also mean, or Nada can also mean, the sum total of all knowledge that comes from Narayana. So Nara, this kind of conventional and colloquial way of addressing Advaita Acharya, is to say that he's the abode of all knowledge, which he was. He's a great Vaishnava, very, very, very learned. This is a photograph, close-up photograph, of the very Shalagram Shila that Advaita Acharya worshipped to call for the descent of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. It's on the altar. You saw a little image of it. You see in the background, there's the lotus feet of Radharani. And there's the Shalagram Shila. So Lord Chaitanya appeared. This is a nice painting of the full moon night in the month of Phalgun, when Caitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Some of the detail is, although it's very auspicious, because on a full moon eclipse, the practice was, even in these brahmanas that never chanted the holy name, they would loudly chant the holy name by entering into the Ganges, half immersed in water, and calling Hari, Hari very loudly, tumultuous sound, as the eclipse went through its phases. That's exactly with the loud chanting of Hari, Hari, is when Caitanya Mahaprabhu made his appearance. And shortly after his appearance, the wife of Advaita went all the way from Shantipur to Navadvip to offer gifts to the newborn child. And of course, Sita is her name. Sita understood, as Advaita understood, that this child is Krishna himself. That's what the painting is showing. In her thoughts, those little bubbles up there, that means she was thinking, this child is Krishna himself. She didn't say that, but that was her understanding as she was offering gifts to little Nimai. In fact, it is said that it is Sita that gave that name, Nimai. Nimai Pandit, he became known. And Nimai was given because he was born under a neem tree, and Sita's contemplation was that the neem tree, which is known to have properties of being medicinal, it's also a protector. Those who take shelter of neem receive protection from the neem tree. So let this child be protected, because the earlier daughters of Mother Sachi all died shortly after they were born. Very sad, very great misfortune. So let this child be protected by the neem tree under which he was born. So she gave that name, it stuck, Nimai Pandit. Like many persons that have affluence, Advaita Acharya had more than one home. His main residence was in Shantipur, but he also had a residence very near Srivas Thakur's home in Navadvip. And to the left, that's the Advaita Acharya's home, is Gadadhar Pandit's home, Gadadhar Bhavan and Advaita Bhavan. And it's significant because in this, communities of the Brahmanas would stay together. So they were all in the same proximity, primarily. And each day, Advaita would give this discourse on Srimad Bhagavatam. And naturally, the elder brother of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, named Vishwarup, he really liked Advaita Acharya's association and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from him. I think we would also. So he rose early in the morning, did his morning bath, applied his tilak, did his worship of his Shalagram Shila, as Brahmanas will do. And then very quickly, even without having his breakfast, he went to Advaita Acharya's home for the morning Bhagavatam class. But Advaita Acharya's Bhagavatam class wasn't 45 minutes. And then the conch blows and you go take breakfast. It was all morning long, Advaita Acharya's Bhagavatam discussion. And Mother Sachi would get an anxiety. My son hasn't had his breakfast and he isn't coming home for lunch. So sometimes, that we see in this painting, his little brother, Nimai, would go take the dhoti of Vishwarup and say, Mother Sachi wants you to come home for lunch. So he followed his little brother and he took his bath and did his midday duties, had his lunch, and back he went to Advaita Acharya's home for the continuation of the Bhagavatam class. And as this went on, after some time, Vishwarup became very, very attracted to the Bhagavatam's message and a very dedicated life to bhakti. Fantastic, right? But if your mother and father and your son is getting super attracted to bhakti, at least some parents start to worry. Maybe he won't get married. Maybe he'll just take sannyas. So we better hurry up and make a marriage arrangement and tie him down somewhere to family life. So Vishwarup heard that talk, and it backfired. He snuck out the back door and took sannyas. As a result, Mother Sachi was in big anxiety. She had already lost many daughters, and now her elder son, Vishwarup, is gone. And she was blaming, in her mind, she was blaming Advaita Acharya. He did this. Because of his influence, now he's broken our family. So he shouldn't be called Acharya. He doesn't deserve that title. And as far as Advaita, he should be called Dvaita. He is involved in this duality of this material world. And this way she was not happy. And there's versions where she was thinking and other versions where she was speaking these understandings. In either case, it came to Lord Chaitanya's attention, and he was very unhappy that his mother, who he adored, he was very affectionate and faithful and saw her as his mother. But when she offended Advaita Acharya, his mood completely changed. He went directly to the house of Mother Sachi, confronted her, and was with his arm raised, ready to hit her. Of course, he didn't hit her, and it was just a pastime. The pastime was to teach, don't criticize Advaita Acharya or any exalted Vaishnav, or any Vaishnav, because this is a great offense, and he couldn't tolerate the offense. So a person seeing him in this posture with his hand raised, ready to hit his mother, stop. This is your mother. You can't do this. And he said, I cannot tolerate offense to a Vaishnav. She can be excused if she falls at Advaita Acharya's feet, begs for his mercy, and he kindly excuses her. And he was in this angry mood. So people scurried to go to Advaita Acharya's home, which was quite some distance away. He was in Shantipur at the time. And they brought him back, and Advaita was beside himself with turmoil, because how can the mother of the universe, Mother Sachi, fall at my feet? That's impossible. So he fell at her feet, and she fell at his feet, and she said what she said, and he said what he said, and everything became nice. And then Lord Caitanya proclaimed, so everyone could understand the teaching that he wanted everyone to understand. One must never engage in vilification, sadhuninda, of a great personality. So Lord Caitanya was instructing the world by performing this pastime with his mother. After this pastime, Advaita had very much an eager desire for Lord Caitanya to show his divinity, because he was taking the role of a student and taking the role of a brahmana, but he knew that he was the personality of Godhead. He had appealed for him to appear, and he and Sati knew he's the personality of Godhead. So he asked him, as you did for Arjuna to show the world your divinity, I request you kindly this one reciprocation. Show me the universal form that you showed to Arjuna. So this is the artist's rendering, one of the artist's renderings of that pastime. So the world would know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord. Of course, as we know, after some time of residing in Navadvip, Lord Caitanya became married, and after some time, Lord Caitanya took sannyas when he was just very young, 24 years old, with a very beautiful young wife. And after accepting sannyas, his intention was to go to Vrindavan. But he was so much mad in ecstasy to reach Vrindavan that Lord Nityananda tricked him and told him, see that river? That's the river Jamuna. Just follow it. You'll get to Vrindavan. But it was the path of the Ganga to reach Shantipur. So he spent 7 days in Shantipur. Immediately they sent someone to get Mother Sachi. Here's a painting in Shantipur of Mother Sachi embracing her now cleanly shaven headed son, Nimai Pandit, now known as Sri Krishna Caitanya. And for 7 days he remained there. But Mother Sachi's request, instead of going to Vrindavan, he went, as we know, to Jagannath Puri. After staying in Jagannath Puri for some time, some months, on the pretext of looking for his elder brother, Vishwarup, who had taken sannyas and was said to have gone to South India, he left Puri, traveled for around 2 years in the whole of South India, delivering the holy name to all the people of the land. And after his return, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then dismissed his brahmachari assistant named Krishna Das. You know the story, many of you. Krishna Das even though having been in the direct association of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who can imagine what that was like, he left his association to join some forest-dwelling Aborigine people called the Bataharis. They were womenizers and drunkards and very sensual people. And they lured him purposely. And Lord Chaitanya went in their midst. And they got their weapons to attack Lord Chaitanya. But little did they know, he's the Supreme Lord. So the weapons fell from their hands and cut themselves. And as they were crying and wailing, he grabbed Krishna Das by his sika and took him to a safe place. So once they got back to Puri, he told Krishna Das, you know what? You can go wherever you like. You're finished with my service. And he was very sad. And so the devotees in Puri, they wanted to cheer him up. Not that what he had done was okay, but they didn't want him to be so crestfallen. So they came up with a plan that they would send him, Krishna Das, to Navadvip to tell all the devotees in Bengal, Lord Chaitanya has come back. He's back from his South India tour. Come quickly. Rath Yatra festival is going to happen soon. You can all see again Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So Advaita Acharya decided to have a 4-day festival. Lord Chaitanya's back festival in Shantipur. But Paramananda Puri, he didn't want to wait around. So Kamalakanta Vishwas, who was Advaita Acharya's personal secretary, was sent to accompany Paramananda Puri. And as they went and reached Jagannath Puri, there was, of course, the meeting with Paramananda Puri and Caitanya Mahaprabhu, which was very nice. Then Kamalakanta Vishwas, because he was the secretary of Advaita, he knew all kinds of intimate, private, confidential, personal things. And one of those things was that he had received some loan from the king. And according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, it was 300 rupees, although they didn't have rupees at that time. But in any case, some debt. And so Kamalakanta Vishwas, very respectfully, wrote a little note to the king, saying basically two things. That Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu, so we should honor him and respect him and worship him. And the second was, he owes some debt, please absolve him of that debt. Very polite and respectful request. Unfortunately for him, Caitanya Mahaprabhu somehow got a copy of that letter, or got the letter. And Lord Chaitanya was like fire. He said, this Kamalakanta Vishwas, he is a rascal. And I don't want to see him. He's come to Puri, but I don't want to see his face. Let him know. Don't come to see me. So when that message came to Kamalakanta Vishwas, imagine he didn't feel very good. And he was very, very unhappy, disturbed. His intention was a good intention. When Advaita Acharya finally reached Jagannath Puri, he spent some time with Kamalakanta Vishwas, who explained what happened. And Advaita Acharya became very angry at Kamalakanta Vishwas, saying, you don't have any idea what you're moaning and complaining about. You got such mercy from Caitanya Mahaprabhu that even he wouldn't give me. I tried in many, many ways, many times to have Caitanya Mahaprabhu take the superior position and admonish me. He wouldn't do it. And so I made a plan. I expounded the Yoga Vashishta, which considers liberation the ultimate goal of life. For this, the Lord became angry at me and treated me with apparent disrespect. And I was very happy. I was dancing and dancing, finally, because the two lords, they each want to see one another as superior. You know, Vaishnavas are like that sometimes. Now Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu, and he sees that Caitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. But Caitanya Mahaprabhu saw Advaita Acharya as an elder, like his father, and superior, to be respected, and Nada, Lord Vishnu. So when Advaita Acharya came and complained, "Why have you shown such kindness to my disciple and admonishing him like this? You never did this to me." Lord Chaitanya laughed and said, "All right, bring him here." So somebody went to bring Kamalakanta Vishwas, and Advaita Acharya said, "Now you've tricked me twice. First you show your kindness by admonishing him, and now you're showing your kindness by bringing him. You never did this with me." And then Lord Chaitanya instructed, the purpose of this pastime was a lesson. Lord Chaitanya would do that. He said publicly, so everyone could hear, a great personality should never seek money and accept money from a materialistic person. In this way, identifying the king, who was a great Vaishnava, but his position as a king was he was dealing so much with money. You shouldn't take money from a materialist, because if you take money from a materialist, your mind will become polluted. And if your mind becomes polluted, then you can't think of Krishna properly. So he was teaching that we should not be eager or greedy or interested in receiving money from materialistic people. Now, the Sankirtan movement of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, on the other hand, is constantly engaging materialistic people in receiving books and giving donations, or the life membership program that Srila Prabhupada established, going to people's homes, enlisting them as life members, giving them standing orders of books, and so forth. In any case, this was the lesson found in Chaitanya Charitamrita regarding Advaita Acharya's Kamalakanta Vishwas. We know that Advaita Acharya liked to worship Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya liked to respect and honor Advaita Acharya. Here's a very nice painting of a scene that happened one day when Advaita Acharya had invited the two lords. Now this may very well have been in Puri, because Lord Chaitanya is with a shaved head, and that's where he was with a shaved head, is in Puri. But he invited the two lords to have lunch at his home. So when they arrived, he made nice leaf plates filled with so many different preparations and offerings. And the two lords, Lord Chaitanya responded a very different way than Lord Nityananda. He said, "Please bring me an empty banana leaf, because you've given me too much. And so I want to take something off and just leave the remnants." And Advaita Acharya objected and said, "Why are you speaking like this? You eat 56 times a day in the Jagannath temple. So what is this? This is but a morsel for you. So please don't complain and just honor prasad." He was taking the superior position, like some people do when they serve prasadam. Take more, take more. But Lord Nityananda was just the opposite. He said, what kind of householder Brahmin are you? You invited me to your home, and you've hardly given me anything. I'm very hungry. And Advaita Acharya said, "Why are you speaking like this? You're such a person, nobody even knows your caste." Of course, he's beyond all distinctions of castes. And so forth. They were speaking and criticizing one another this way, that way. Lord Nityananda finally took some palmful of rice and threw it on the floor in disgust. And some grains of rice bounced off the floor, hit the leg, and stuck to the leg of Advaita Acharya, which caused him to dance in ecstasy, like you see in the painting. That the exchange between these two was very amazing, very puzzling, and very sweet. transcendental, difficult to understand for sure. Normally, we think of Advaita Acharya in terms of, as mentioned, his involvement in the Sankirtan. Like during Rath Yatra, Advaita Acharya was one of the dancers, despite his age. There were 2 dancers for each of the 7 Sankirtan parties, and he was one of the dancers, along with Haridas Thakur. And finally, at the conclusion of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, Advaita Acharya sent a message to Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And the message was a riddle that Advaita Acharya understood, Lord Chaitanya understood, and no one else understood. And the riddle goes like this. Please inform Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is acting like a madman, that everyone here has become mad like him. Inform him also that in the marketplace, rice is no longer in demand. And further, tell him that those now mad in ecstatic love are no longer interested in the material world. Also, tell Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that one who has also become a madman in ecstatic love has spoken these words. So the riddle solved goes like this. You came into this world at my request, calling loudly, Hari, please descend. So you came. In the madness of love of God, you have converted others into the madness of love of God. I am one such person in the madness of love of God. Then in the marketplace, being interested in material commodities, that liking has subsided. In fact, because of such ecstatic love, persons are no longer interested in sense gratification and material absorption. So, thus, your purpose has been fulfilled. If you so desire, you can return to your spiritual abode and conclude your pastimes. Lord Chaitanya understood, and shortly thereafter, he departed from this world. Now, shortly, we're going to be hearing more about Lord Nityananda, and then in turn about Lord Chaitanya. So this is that season where we're honoring these 3 Prabhus. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Prabhu. So this is a little discussion in honor of Advaita Acharya's appearance and activities within the Panchatattva. So let's see if there's some discussion. What time is it? Okay, we have 6 minutes on the clock. So if there's anybody that would like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and then present your question. Not everybody at once, please. Do we have something in the room? If there's nothing online, we'll go to questions in the room, and we have our own online questions, I think. Okay. Go ahead.
Maharaj,
yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, when you
take the mask down so I can hear you better. Thanks.
Maharaj, when you showed the picture of Mahavishnu, can you please tell me how the universe has come from Mahavishnu? Is it from the pores or from his breathing?
Well, both, not one or the other. It's both are spoken, but when you inhale and when you exhale, there's certainly the air that's going through the mouth and the nose, but there's also perspiration coming, or something coming from the pores of the skin. So it's coming from both. It's a trick question.
I was confused because sometimes we hear.
Yes, sometimes we hear both.
Yeah.
I've never heard that anybody ask such a question. It's a good question. But my understanding is this. As the body breathes, yes? The main breathing is through the mouth and the nose, through the lungs. But the body, the skin also breathes. So when you put oil or something, then the skin doesn't breathe as easily. So it also comes that way, through the pores of his skin, and thus his breathing. Okay?
The lotus feet of Advaita Acharya that you were showing,
Yes.
with markings. I have seen markings of other lords, like different marking. Is there any significance with respect?
There is
to
significance, and I'm not absorbed in those distinctions. There are persons that are, and I'm not one of them. The markings mean something besides identifying this is this Prabhu and that is that incarnation or something. There are some particular things, and I'm not knowledgeable about that at all. It's a little esoteric for me.
And also, one other thing is, in the slides you were showing, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was lying in the causal ocean when Advaita Acharya woke him up. Not causal ocean, the ocean of milk.
Yeah, that's right.
So, do we understand that Lord Chaitanya comes from Kshirodakshaya Vishnu?
One can think that way. Here, there's a section in Chaitanya Charitamrita where it says, in some places it says the incarnations come from, in some places it says come from, and they're all right. And there's ways to, explain why they're all right, but rather than going through that right now, because they're expansions of each other. Some say specifically, Garbhodakshay Vishnu is the source. Some say specifically, Kshirodakshay Vishnu is the source. But, ultimately, who's the source of everything? So Lord Chaitanya is the source. So they're all right. Girls, anything? No? Okay. Anything online?
Question from David Lebron.
Okay.
When did Lord Chaitanya leave this planet? What was his age?
48. And it was in Puri. At least the main description of his disappearance was he went into the Gopinath temple where Gadadhar Pandit was worshipping. He danced before the deity, then he went directly onto the altar and disappeared into the body of the Gopinath deity. That's the standard explanation of his disappearance at the age of 48. That's all. There's certainly the air that's going through the mouth and the nose. Okay, we're having some interesting echoes here. A ghost in the machine.
There's one more question.
One more question.
Question from Amara Mataji.
Uh-huh.
Mahavishnu is expansion of Lord Krishna himself. How do they both act as different personalities as Lord Chaitanya and Advaita Acharya? And this is the first question.
Well, let's just do one at a time. expansions of the personality of Godhead can interact with the source of their expansion. They have personalities. They're tattvas of the same tattva, but they have their personalities and they interact. The mood of Mahavishnu towards Krishna is service. And Krishna is the one served, and that's their relationship. Not only living entities, but the direct expansions have that same mood. Particularly, Mahavishnu has that mood towards Krishna. And Advaita Acharya has that mood towards Mahaprabhu. No problem.
The question is a little extended as well. In the same lines, how do they both act as different personalities, and how are they able to relish their pastimes with each other?
Through the agency of the internal potency, they relish their pastimes with one another.
There are no other questions.
No other questions.
Just waiting to see if the Zoom participants have some questions.
I see something here.
Question from Anil Manga, Prabhu. Maharaj, you spoke about apparance. We sometimes hear the pastimes of Sanatana Goswami chanting, and he laughs in his meditation, and that is considered an offense. So can you please elaborate?
It was not Sanatana Goswami, it was Rupa Goswami. It's described in Bhakti Ratnakar. And the offense was unintentional, but because the Brahmana considered that he had been offended, it had an impact. So what to do? Even if you don't do some offense, someone may think that you're making some offense. So if you find out that that has happened, you go to them. And supposing you don't know if someone is feeling that you've made some offense, what do you do? Prabhupada was asked that question. And Prabhupada said, therefore, we every day offer this prayer, Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. This is sincerely expressed prayer to seeking forgiveness from all the Vaishnavas who unknowingly we may have offended. And if you do know, you go to the Vaishnav and seek forgiveness. Because Vaishnava aparad is serious. Very serious business. Okay? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.